Hello, this is Preacher Man Piper, Doc Hatfield, coming to you again. Thank you so much for subbing to my channel. I never expected any of that, and I just appreciate you people so very much. Let me give you a story, and I'll probably have to do this in two parts. I don't like to do a long video. Who wants to sit and listen to 30 and 40 minutes of a video? So anyway, let me start at the very beginning. 1945, December the 11th, I was born. I know looked like it was forever ago. And about a week after I was born, my wife's, you didn't know I was married within 1 week after being born, did you? Yeah, been married a long time. About a week after I was born, my mother's brother came down and told my mother, had her sign a card and said, I want you to know I put another $5,000 in the bank for this boy, Buster. And she said, so only you and me is on the account, and that way nobody can get it. And he said, but the same stipulation is that you cannot tell Bill, your husband, just like you couldn't tell him about the other one, for my brother, Billy, who was 4 years old. So, about a week after that, my daddy's mother came over, see how I was doing, and sat down to have a cup of coffee with my mother and told her, said, we're praying for Buster, that he'll grow up to be a fine young man. And my mother said, well, I'm praying that he'll be a preacher and a piano player. And my grandmother said, oh, that would be wonderful. And so she said that she wished that they could do something to help us, but they wasn't able to help us. And so my mother told us that if you'll keep something just between you and me, I'll tell you something. So she told her about the two savings accounts for me and my brother. Well, she went home and she was talking to my granddad, Buster Hatfield, and she was telling him, said, you need to know that the boys are well taken care of, and she told him about their accounts. But apparently she didn't say nothing about not saying nothing. So about a month after that, my dad came over there to their house, and he wanted to see my granddad, and so he went out in the backyard, and they were talking, and my granddad made the statement, well, one thing about it, those boys will sure be taken care of. And my dad said, what are you talking about? I'm taking care of them boys. I've got a good job, blah, blah, blah. And he said, oh, I was talking about those savings accounts, you know, the $5,000 in each savings account, one for Billy and one for Buster. And he said, oh. And so when he left, he said to himself, well, fiddle, I didn't know that money was there. I could use that money. So he devised a plan in a few weeks to go and try to get the money. He told my mother, he said, if you'll get dressed, get all prettied up, said, I'll take you to Tulsa to that favorite restaurant of yours. So she was just excited, and she went with him, didn't realize what was going on. They get up there, and he tells her about this business proposition and all that, And he said, I only need $10,000. She said, where in the world are you going to get $10,000? We can't borrow it from the bank. We don't have any money. We don't have no credit. And he said, well, can't we use them 2 savings accounts of the boys? And she was shocked. She said, where'd you hear about them 2 savings accounts? He said, Dad told me. And she said, well, I can't give you that money because that money is not mine. That money belongs to my brother. And if I was to give it to you, then that'd be stealing it. And I'm not going to steal it. And he said, look, we can take it out. We can use it for a down payment on the business. Why, within a year, we'll have it back in there. And she said, I can't do that. Said he checks them accounts every month. And if he sees that there is nothing in there, he'll know that I got it. I'm not going to steal from my own brother. So she got up and walked out of the restaurant and went out and got in the car. And it was cold and freezing and snowing. And there was some ice on the roads. And so when he gathered himself, he got up and he went out and got in the car. And he told her, he said, now look, we're going to stay right here. We're going to go over to our friend's house and stay here for the weekend. And then we'll go Monday morning and get the money. And she said, I'm not going to do it. Well, he just went out of his mind and went nuts. And as he's driving down the road, he reaches over and opens her car door and shoves her right out the door. Well, she falls out of the car screaming. And when he gets up, he looks in the rearview mirror and he sees she's trying to get up. Well, he backed up and backed over her. And then he backed up far enough to see her in front, and she was still trying to get up and hollering and screaming. And he come back and ran over her and then took off. Well, at that same time, there was a man on each side of the street that they were going down. And both of them heard this. And both of them came out, and one of them said, I didn't get the license plate. The other one said, I did, and I've already called the police. So they went out to check on her, and they said, she's alive. Hurry up. Let's get some help. So they got her in the hospital, and about 6 weeks later, they brought her home. But they brought her home to her mother's, where me and my brother was staying. And so when they brought her in, they had to put her in the bed, and she was bedridden. She couldn't walk. She couldn't talk. Her hands were all mangled up and twisted up and everything else. And she was just helpless. Well, my grandmother, her mother, turned around and looked at me and said, it's all your fault. And of course, here I am, 3 months old. I don't know what she's saying. And so she goes in and she tells her husband, my granddad, said, you go get a baby pen in the morning and you bring that baby pen home. So he did. She said, I want you to put it out on the front enclosed porch. So he put it out on the front enclosed porch. This was wintertime, and there wasn't really no heat out there. A little heat come out there from the house, but that's about it. And so he put it together, and then she came in and she got me, picked me up, and took me out there and just pitched me into the baby pen and told me, this is where you're going to be from now on. It's all your fault. If you hadn't have been born, this would have never happened to my precious daughter. She goes back in the house and tells my mother's sister and her husband, I don't want you having nothing to do with that boy. I don't want you having nothing to do. Don't help him. Don't give him nothing to eat. Don't give him nothing to drink. Don't give him anything. Well, she would give me a bottle of milk about twice a week, and the rest of the time she'd give me water. But every single day she would come out there to the baby pen, and before I could even stand up, she would pick me up by the hair of the head, and she would slap me around, telling me she's going to kill me if my mother dies, and telling me it's all my fault and all that stuff. And then she'd just throw me aside. And so that happened every single day for 1 year. I was 1 year and 3 months old, and it was about 5 in the morning. I heard my mother make a noise. It was like, oh, like that. Make a noise for the first time that she was home. My grandmother, ran in there and looked at her and called the doctor, and the doctor said, we'll have an ambulance there in a minute, and they'll bring her to the hospital. So they got the doctor got the ambulance, and the ambulance picked her up, and on the way to the hospital, my mother died. And so here I am, 1 year and 3 months old. I'm still in just a playpen. I've never been allowed to be out of it. And she comes and she says to me, well, it won't be long till you'll be out of here. And then she knocks me across the playpen. On the day of the funeral, she walked in, she said, this is your lucky day. Today, you get to get out of the playpen and get to walk out in the middle of the woods, and we're going to bury you alive. Your mama died, you died. And so they left and went to the funeral. They left a girl there to babysit me and my brother, and they told her, they said, don't have nothing to do with him, talking about me. And so there was a knock on the door, and she went to the door, and she said, I can't open this door. He said, well, I'm the boy's father. I want you to open this door now. She said, I can't open the door. Well, he kicked the door open, and he picked me up. He called for my brother. He come running, and so he put both of us in his car and whisked us off to Hobart, Oklahoma. In Hobart, he took us to the welfare office, and he said, I don't want these kids. Their mama died, so something needs to happen. You need to get a home for them. And so he turned around to leave. She said, wait a minute, we can't keep these kids. You can't leave them here if you don't sign them over. Write their names down here and sign this paper. So he wrote my name down, Buster J. Hatfield, and he wrote my brother's name down. And I don't know what it was. It was Billy something Hatfield. And so then at that time, he left. Well, she asked my brother, what's wrong with that boy, talking about me, and he just looked at her, and a little bit later, a preacher come walking in there, and he was going to tell them about a child that he had placed in a home. And so at that time, she said, well, I can't do anything for these kids. I can't find a place for them. And said, that one right there, that little one, looked like he's going to die. And the preacher said, well, I'll tell you what I'll do. I'll take him home with me, and I'll take him and find out what's wrong with him at the hospital. And she said, boy, that would be great. That would solve my problem. He said, you don't worry about it. He said, I'll take him with me, and then you can go home and have a good weekend. So he took us home with him, and he took me to the hospital. 3 days later, he came to the hospital to see about me. The doctor told him, he said, "Preacher, this boy don't have but 6 months to live. He's got irreversible malnutrition and about 17 other diseases that I can tell," and said he can't even eat or drink. Said, "Look here." And he opened my mouth. He said, "See, he's got ulcers all around his tongue, all over his lips, all over his mouth, all over his throat. Never seen nothing like it in my life. Don't know what it is. Don't know how it happened. Don't know nothing about it." And so he said, "Well, you just need to find someone that'll take him and keep him till he dies." And the preacher said, "I'll take him home, and I'll keep him, and we'll bury him." So he took me home. 6 months went by. I didn't die. Now understand, I wasn't eating anything. Couldn't eat anything. But they were giving me milk every day, which was helping me. And so at the end of that 6 months, they went back to the doctor, and he said, "Well, that was a guess, but said you can expect him to die any time." Now I see that I've gone over 16 minutes, so let me end this today, and we'll start up another one, maybe tomorrow or the next day, okay? In the meantime, may the good Lord bless you. May the good Lord shine his grace down upon you. May he supply every need and take care of every circumstance. And until I see you again, may God bless.